So you should be watching this video after you've already walked yourself through the tutorial on Khan Academy on how to graph polynomial functions that are in factored form. And at the end of this video I'll show you how to do the challenge problem that was listed as the last problem on Khan Academy. Anyway, so here's the start of it, and the function that you see in the upper left hand corner of your screen, that's the function we're going to be graphing. And you should have learned multiplicity, you should have learned zero, you should have learned factors, things like that, the terminology associated with graphing polynomial functions. So starting off with when we look at a polynomial function that's in factored form, all we have to do is count the powers, the multiplicities of each of the factors, and that gives us our degree. So 1 plus 1 gives us 2. So we want to identify, first of all, what's the degree of the polynomial, and then the second thing we want to identify is this polynomial, is the a positive or is the a negative, and that would determine, based on our knowledge of polynomials, the end behavior model, that the ends are going to go up. So it's a second degree polynomial, and the ends are both going to go up because the a in this case is positive. So let's draw the graph in, let's pick a color here, blue. So what we're going to do is now we're going to plot the zeros. So we see we have a factor of x minus 4, which means we have a 0 of 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to plot that 0 on the x-axis. And then with the factor of x plus 2, that corresponds to a 0 of x equals negative 2. Now, we know that each of the multiplicities is odd, and each of them is a 1, so that means that if the graph looks like this, the ends are going to go up. It's going to go up like that, and it has to cross through the x-axis at each of the x-intercepts, and so we just connect. Doesn't have to be pretty, but that's what it's going to look like. Each multiplicity is odd, so therefore the graph crosses the x-axis at each of the zeros. And that's it. So we already know what a parabola looks like. We don't care how far down it goes. All we're really concerned about right now in graphing polynomials is we just really want to make sure we know when is the graph above the x-axis and when is it below the x-axis, and it all hinges on what the zeros are. So we're going to go a little bit faster for the next as we move along in the examples. So here's our next example. The degree, again, we want to identify the degree of the polynomial, and we just count the powers, count the multiplicities. 2 plus 1, that gives us 3. And we know a third degree polynomial with an a positive, so the a value is, oops, that's bad. So the a value is the coefficient, it's right out there, and the a value is 1, which is positive, which means the graph will go up from left to right. So degree odd and a positive, we know the graph goes up from left to right. We see we have a, well, let's do the multiplicities in a second. We have a factor of x plus 5, and a factor of x plus 5 means that we have an x-intercept, or a 0 of negative 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we put a negative 5. We put the graph's going to cross the x, or it's going to touch at least the x-axis at negative 5. And then we have a 0, a factor of x minus 3, which means we have a 0 at positive 3. And again, we know the graph looks like this, so it's going to go up from left to right. So we know it's going to start here, and it's going to end there. And then we just have to figure out the behavior at each of the zeros. And the behavior, since the multiplicity of the factor x plus 5, which corresponds to the 0, or the x-intercept of negative 5, it's going to touch the graph. It's going to touch the x-axis at negative 5. So it's going to come up here, touch it, it's going to go back down. And now we have to connect this piece here. Let's see here. We have to connect this piece here with this piece right there. And to do that, we just go ahead and look at the multiplicity of the next factor. Multiplicity is a 1, which means it's good because it's going to go through, it's going to cross the x-axis at x equals 3. I'll make a second video for the rest of the examples.